Hi, um, just a little backstory here. I've recently retired to Bali from Australia, and I brought a cute little Aero Scout, or the Chinese copy of Aero Scout. Well, they're all made in China. They do a fabulous job on the little foamies. Anyway, I brought the Aero Scout over here, FPV, set up for FPV and line of sight, only to find that down the bottom end of Bali, where I am, there's very few places you can fly without people, as in to fly safely. So it's one thing to get in the air, plenty of beaches here. You get in the air, fly around for 10 minutes, and there's people walking down the beach, you've got nowhere to land. I had intended on doing some slope soaring off some of the cliffs here, and the same thing. It's one thing to throw it in the air, but trying to get it back down on the ground again safely without hitting people or animals, yeah, it's a challenge. So I decided to do something I have never done, and that's go to a VTOL. Little backstory, I started flying free flight, or at least building my own balsa birds back in the 1970s. And 1982, I think it was my first radio control plane, and I had a boat and old Tamiya car as well. So I've been around for a little while, but I've been able to dodge the high-tech PIDs and CLIs and everything else. I've done a little bit of drone work, DJI type stuff. Not so much freestyle or anything like that. I've had 3 or 4 quads, but I really haven't done much with them. My passion has always been warbirds and scale type stuff up to, I think the biggest I've had was about 3.5 meter Wilga. That was a monster of a thing. Anyway, quarter-tail cubs and all that fun stuff. So, anywho, I decided to step out of my comfort zone and have a go at a VTOL, because vertical takeoff and landing with the joy of fixed wing really appealed to me. I did a lot of homework, and to find something in a reasonable package, plug and play type package, or ARF, was really difficult to find with the VTOL. It didn't require a hell of a lot of work as a hobby grade. I mean, if you want to spend $5,000, $10,000, yeah, there's a bucket load out there now. But for a hobby grade version, difficult to find. So I ended up making my choice, Heewing, a T2. They have a T1 and a T2. I think the T1 also comes out as a plug and play VTOL. But I got the T2. The T1's under 1 meter, I'm pretty sure. It's quite small. This is the 1200 or 1.2 meter. It's small for me. Most of my birds have always been like 1500 was a toy, and going upwards from there. So this is quite small for me, but from what I've seen online, a lot of the reviews and unboxings, people regard these as quite big. I will say the fuselage is quite cavernous, given it is only 1.2 meters. I'm going to be doing this. I'm not going to do an unboxing. Everybody else has done it. When I get to the contents of the fuselage, I'll be showing you what I have done. Because I've done things a little bit differently. I like my scale FPV with head tracking. So I've come up with my own little variation on that, which is going to be unique from everyone else, because my personal needs are different. I'm not looking for great flight duration. I've read guys getting in excess of 80 minutes flight time out of these things, and I'm not interested in that. If I can get a solid 20-minute flight, I'm happy as a pig in mud. So yeah, I'm not going to do an unboxing. There's already 100 of them out there. Sorry if this is a little bit shaky. I've just come back from the gym, and yeah, I'm just doing this on the mobile phone, so it might not be all that pleasurable, but I'll try and walk through this as quickly as I can. So no further ado, this is such a well thought out kit. For around $1,000 or $1,100, I can remember how much it was. I'm astounded as to how much R&D has gone into not just this plane, but even just putting this case together. It has proper latches and a handle. You can see the plastic still on it. I haven't maiden yet. I'm doing this short video. So, ta-da! That's the beast. Like I said, I'm not going to do an unboxing. Everybody else has done it. I will point out a couple of things. Mine did not come with an instruction manual, the paper version. So I started making up as I went. I would suggest, just a little bit of advice, when you first get this, take everything out, go through everything. There's a whole bunch of hardware stuff inside the fuselage when it first turns up. Familiarise yourself with everything, go through the instruction manual, make sure you understand everything. Before you start putting things like push rods and clevises and before you put any of that together, I would suggest powering up the FC, getting your radio control receiver talking to the FC, because you need to get these centered. I had one aileron, I forget which aileron it was, but one of the ailerons, it was in the incorrect position. It wasn't neutral. So if I had that push rod, the control surface push rod hooked up, it would have done damage to the surface or the clevis or something. So yeah, I would power it up first. Make sure all your sticks are neutral, as in your rudder, aileron, elevator, and then you can start putting your push rods on. The other reason for that is because you need to make sure, this is the rudder servo, you need to make sure that that servo is in the neutral position to be able to put this item on. Now, I think it's a brilliant idea. It's a full floating rudder. It doesn't just have a control surface like this on the back, a typical conventional rudder. The entire vertical stabilizer is a floating rudder. So it pivots on that point, and this is the leading edge. Now, if I was going to say there's a bit of a design fault, I would say that would be it, because that clamps on the servo spline. It's nice metal, beautifully made, but it should be splined to match the spline on the servo. If the clamp ever comes loose, this screw on top is not going to stop it from sliding on the spline. This should be splined to match the spline on the servo, so it can absolutely lock in place. Even if there was only one tooth, just needs something to lock in there. At least this one doesn't. So if that clamp ever backs off, this can turn around. And why I'm concerned with that is because this is a full floating rudder, which that's the rudder there. So this leading edge, when the wing gets on the side of the leading edge, it's going to try and, it's a bit like a, I forget what they call it now, but if the wind gets in, when you turn the rudder, there's a lot of load on this point here, a lot of load. And it concerns me that that's only held by a clamp with no teeth, no way to actually lock it into place. But to be honest, that's about the only gripe I have. About the only other thing that I was concerned about is that lack of ventilation through the fuselage. You've got the tail boom, VTOL motor and prop assembly. The ESC is sitting in here, and there is very little, if any, airflow going through here. Now, my video transmitter is down here. I'm running DJI version 1. I'm a little bit old school. If it works, don't upgrade it. So my video transmitter, the air unit, is underneath, and I want to do that, try and keep the top as clean as I can. I've already got enough junk on top, and it gets pretty hot in there. So I've opened out the front on this vent, and I've opened up slots on either side. I've got a fan underneath, I'll show you later, and a fan on top. Now this fan on top actually sucks air out, and then I've opened up the inside down the back here, and open up the vents more at the back. You need to have, I can't remember, at least two times the exit as you do with the entry for airflow to go through. But if I didn't do that, normally most of the guys are putting a GPS unit there, or they can put the GPS unit up the front, and there is almost no airflow. So your flight controller, power distribution board, ESC for the tail, that's all inside, and that's developing heat. Testing on the ground here, everything gets hot. So yeah, I think they're the two main things I think could be improved. The worry, of course, is the clamp that holds this down, which is that clamp there. That all that does is pinches onto the forward spar, main wing spar. So I don't think it would take too much pressure build up inside the fuselage. So if you're doing some stupid, crazy dives, I'd be worried about building up pressure inside the fuselage and popping that out. As for the model itself, I am astounded how well it is put together. It's so much R&D has gone into this, it blows my mind. The quality of the workmanship, the foam finish, it's like it's got a clear, almost skin over the foam to cut into it, like to cut in a bit of a recess for the camera. That's tough to cut into. Man, it's tough. It is just so well built. I don't know how resilient it will be in the sun, especially the summer here in Bali, it gets pretty hot. I am vaguely tempted to paint it white, but then this isn't going to be an everyday flyer. I'm going to love flying it when I do. But yeah, so now I'll just quickly run through how I've set this plane up. So as I mentioned, I wanted to have full pan and tilt, and with a version 1 DJI air unit. So flipping underneath, I actually, call me crazy, I'm running 2 radio control units. So that's where I end up putting the GPS. That's actually slotted out. This is what I mean, so many things. With all this camera gear on top, they've left this cavity open here, anticipating people are going to have GoPros or whatever on top of the fuselage. None of this comes anywhere near touching anything down there. It's all open cavity. The only thing I had to take out was a little piece of foam here to make room for this antenna. So off one of my quads, I removed, I think it was a micro receiver, this Crossfire micro receiver, so that is wired straight into the flight controller. GPS wiring also goes back into the flight controller, so that gives full radio control for the entire plane except for the pan and tilt. So ran out of channels. There's no channels left. I was hoping that I was going to be able to discover some sort of magic trickery to be able to run pan and tilt, but I couldn't. So I took my Crossfire with the PWM outputs out of my Aeroscout and put it in here. So hopefully you can see that. So that's the antenna, that one there. That's for the second radio control receiver, and I've got power power is coming off the, I think it's the camera port on the flight controller. And that's just pan and tilt coming off that. And then that powers that outside lead just powers the fan on top of the air unit. So, yes, that's pretty much it. Now, the other thing I had to do, so that's why it's such a mess. The other thing I chose to do was power the air unit off the balance port on the flight battery, which is something that's really quite dangerous to do. I had to make up my own little plug. I don't know if you can see that very well. Anyway, it's because it's very easy to play if you're not paying attention, really easy to reverse polarity and fry everything. So I wouldn't normally recommend it, but the reason why I've done that is because I have read some of the earlier versions of the T2. The power distribution board is a little bit lacking in supplying amps, so I decided to power my air unit externally, because if ever I get to the point where I want to crank it up to 1200 milliwatts, which I don't think I ever have actually, that's drawing a fair bit of current out of the power distribution board, so I'd rather take it straight from the flight LiPo. Now, the other thing I had to do, because I'm running these Lunken Great things, 8,400 milliamp hour. That's the biggest battery I'm going to put in here, lithium ion. I'm not going to go any bigger than that. I'm not going to go dual batteries. I'm not going to go 10,000, 12,000 milliamp hour or 12 amp hour. Because the other thing I have heard is, or that I've read around the place, is that the speed controllers are a little bit sensitive. So, as in, there's not a lot of leeway. They probably should have been 30 or 40 amp speed controllers, but they are what they are. I'm not going to upgrade them, so I'd rather keep the weight down and go for shorter flight times than to stress the ESC or the power distribution board. To be able to get this grade, I've got two of these batteries. I have to get CG, I've got to move it to that point. Originally, the flight controller and the power distribution board sat through here, which made it impossible to be able to get the CG right. So, by pure chance and luck, all the wiring coming from the wing roots, main wing roots, there's just enough length in the cabling to be able to relocate it. So I've actually put the forward of screw position onto the back of the bracket. So I've literally just relocated from there to here, which is great. I was a little bit concerned about moving the flight controller away from the original position, because I'm guessing the PIDs and everything would have been calculated on where it was located in relation to the CG. When I first started playing with quads, it would be like 15 years ago or more, I can't remember. You had to actually, back then you had to calculate the exact distance away from the CG, both laterally and longitudinally, and adjust the PIDs accordingly. So I wasn't sure how this was going to go because it's already pre-configured. So as it turns out, I did a hover test just here in the little lounge room, and perfect. It just popped up off the floor and just sat there and hovered. So that's all happy. Now, getting back to center of gravity, make sure when you're setting up, make sure you check the center of gravity. It's there are two, I don't know if you're going to see them there. There's two marks under each wing. Make sure it is super critical you get your centre of gravity right. Generally speaking, with just a fixed wing like a warbird or a civilian rate control plane, when you maiden, you tend to maiden a little bit with the centre of gravity forward. You try and push the weight forward a little bit, just to err on the side of caution until you get things trimmed out. But this is a VTOL, so when you pop up off the ground, the flight controller is going to go, oh, I'm just saying if it's nose heavy, because if I didn't relocate the flight controller, if it stayed here, this would have to be back here somewhere. Horribly nose heavy. So if I ignored it and flew nose heavy, the flight controller will keep it level, stable, although the poor motors are going to be working out of sync a little bit, which is fine going vertically, but then when it transitions, there's like a null between vertical flight and transitioning into forward flight. And being nose heavy, it's most likely going to nosedive before it gathers enough airspeed in forward flight to be able to start flying before the wings can actually start flying it, before the wings can generate lift, especially if you're nose heavy as well. If the wind gets underneath the tail, it's going to push the nose down. And if it's nose heavy as well, it's going to head for the ground. So make sure whenever you fly this, like any other plane, fixed wing plane, always fly it into the wind. It doesn't matter when you're in just vertical mode, Q loiter or whatever they call it, that's fine. But as soon as you want to transition into forward flight, make sure you turn the plane around so it's facing into the wind, and then go for your life, and you should be fine. If your CG is right and you're flying into the wind, perfect. So that's my setup. 2 radar control units. One is for radar control of the plane, and the second one is simply for pan and tilt for head tracking on my little homemade head tracker. I was actually going to use one of Motion 6 BAG gimbal, but I'm trying to keep the weight down because I've already thrown so much other garbage in there. Later on, I'll be putting just a little, GoPro Mini or whatever it is, I forget what they call them. It's like a little cube. I'm going to stick that in the front so I can get some nice footage. So I will set up the laptop, walk through how to download, and I'm talking about for somebody totally green to this, download and install the mission planner and how to hack these goggles, and I'll just run it through for everybody so it takes a little bit of guesswork out. Back shortly.